The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We are your hosts, Ron Kojma and Webster Marsh, and we have a fantastic conversation today. Nathan is with us. This is going to be a great conversation, but before we jump into it, just want to take a moment to remind everyone that this week's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. And additionally, check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com, where you can see other episodes from the past or maybe in the future if you're listening to this as an archive. But also check it out for some merch. And we also have a really cool news ticker that picks up pretty much anything lighting controls related and spits out some kind of web page for you to click on, worth looking at. I kind of like it. It's interesting. But otherwise, here's Nathan. Nathan, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Nathan Williams. I work for a local rep firm here in Houston, Texas, CW Lighting. These guys have been around for 40 years. They're just great. So I started 16 years ago, back in 2007, at a touring house. Been on the road with a bunch of groups, installed, been ETC certified, Leviton, Strand, the list goes on, of a bunch of great manufacturers. I've done dry docks with cruise ships, themed entertainment, architectural architainment, you name it, and the lighting controls. I've been there. I'm CLCP, CLST, so I've NALMCO all the way. So I will nerd out with you guys all day long on controls. So
Well,
my
awesome.
wife
Well,
gets
thank
tired
you
of
for
hearing it.
well, thank you for joining us. I mean, it's awesome to have a fellow nerd to kind of talk through all this stuff. And just so our listeners have an idea here, do you mind describing what a touring house is?
Yeah, so for the most part, when you got a big rock show that needs to go out, these guys aren't purchasing their own equipment. They're not purchasing their own desks. They're not purchasing their own truss, their moving lights, their conventionals, their dimmer racks, which we rarely see dimmer racks anymore. No, they're going to a big rental shop. Great companies out there. Like Bandit and PRG and just a bunch of these great companies out there that buy all this gear and they rent it out to these shows, and then they supply manpower for either local or their own guys. And so I used to go on tour. I used to work for a theatrical lighting system out of Huntsville, Alabama. They were bought out by Four Wall years ago, but David Milley and his guys, they were just a great group, and they gave me the opportunity to get in this industry, and stuck with it.
Yeah, so I mean, when you're in this very specific niche of the market, which is theatrical or entertainment, the term touring house is pretty commonplace, but in architectural, it means nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's very uncommon for you to be doing a tour of an architectural system. It's not to say that it hasn't been done, but it's not something you would have big companies dedicated to renting equipment for. So, when we're talking architectural, we're more talking permanent installation rather than these temporary setups.
Exactly. I can't imagine taking all the lights off a skyscraper and go, okay, guys, let's move it down the road. Time to change the look, rent it, your rental's up, time to repo that. Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, you just gotta crane ready to go that you break out and
right.
No, but I think what's interesting about coming from a touring house is that you do see a different side of things because of that temporary application. I mean, you kind of need to think through all of the details every single time you go to a new location. You need to think installation, control, application. So, it's almost like you've been given training in the thought process of a contractor.
I've always felt that some of the best technicians out there always come from that theatrical background because of those
Hmm.
hours and the attention to detail that goes into, um, hey, you got to get this set up this way, and what if this happens during the show? Got to be able to work on the fly, and you got to go through this. Everyone's heard the show must go on.
Mm.
Right.
In our line of work, well, the building still has to open, and the lights still have to be able to turn on. So in that sense, the show still must go on. So a lot of that attitude, I think, nicely comes over from that.
Hmm.
I always have found that coming from that background has always benefited a lot of technicians that go from the
Hmm.
entertainment side to the architectural commercial side.
Yeah, I made the same jump myself, right? I went from a
Yeah.
production background into, doing installations. And I'm curious for you, what I know what made me want to make that jump. What made you want to take that leap from the production background to sort of an installer
Yeah.
architectural?
So for me, it started back when I was in third grade in theater. You start as a little actor, work your way up through, high school theater. My high school theater teacher, he got me in with a colleague of his at TLS. I was hired into the install department, but being ETC certified, hey, I get to go out and work Dimmer Beach because everybody has ETC touring racks. So,
Yep.
you need the guy to fill in at Dimmer Beach. Hi, that's me. I'm, your touring rack guy. So
Before
I'm
you
sitting
continue,
there.
just to clarify, what is Dimmer Beach to our
Dimmer
listeners?
Beach. Well, years ago, when you didn't have all these fancy LEDs and you were running, actual
Hmm.
575 watt lamps or 1000-watt lamps, you had to actually have a dimmer rack being fed by three-phase power run off a generator or house power to actually power up all these theatrical fixtures. And so sometimes you'd have two, three, four dimmer racks that have 48 circuits of lighting in it, and
Hmm.
somebody's got to sit back there and man it and make sure that, hey, is everything working? And so you're feeding these with DMX, or as the network has progressed, no longer DMX but streaming ACN,
Hmm.
and going down that rabbit hole. But there's a
But yeah,
guy just sitting there watching all that. Yeah.
right, and
So
to
I
give
became that
people
guy.
a visual of what a dimmer beach looks like. It is a bunch of cable,
A
just so
bunch of
much
cable.
cable coming out of this
Trip
box,
hazard.
and it's a massive trip hazard. And additionally, you have the power that's going out to the fixtures, but you also have feeder cable, which is coming from your three phase either company switch or generator, and so it's just so much cable. It's just
So
an
much.
incredible amount.
And heat. And a lot of
And
And
heat.
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 And you need to
Lots of
coil
heat.
things just right so that you don't melt your cables.
Yep. And you
Yep.
get rid of the harmonics just so you don't
Right.
Yep.
end up with, all the fun filament noise that's coming back on it, and just all
Right.
the things that you have to do. And so yeah, that's kind of how I
No,
came
it's
into
huge.
it, is install to that. And they would throw me off on one-offs locally, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'd get to do little LD load, one-offs and be board op. And I got to work on a couple of film shoots for PBS Legends and Lyrics and be L1 for that. So I got to do some really fun things, in the background, but my primary duties were I was install, programmer, and what we all do today. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I mean that's how you cut your teeth on
yeah,
lighting controls and lighting in general. But now your role's different. You work with a sales rep. And so
yeah.
curious what that transition was like for you, because it sounds like everybody has a different experience with that.
Yeah, so for me, like, I left the dealer world to go work for just a controls third party um,
Hmm.
company, just doing startups for multiple lines down in Florida. And from there, just I made my way back to another dealer. The great guys at Main Stage, worked with them out of Memphis, and did that with them for a while, and just kind of made my way through the dealer circuit again. Finally went on my own and said, okay, means to an end. I'm just going to do this third party thing until I'm tired of traveling. So anybody that's really done third party or the dealer route that has a large enough territory, that's 80-90% of your time is just traveling. I mean, that was it for me. And, I was married going on 2 years. My wife was grad school. So 2 years of traveling was okay. She was probably happy to have me out of the house so she could actually study. And then the opportunity came for me to actually be home every night. And the Houston market, our market is basically Connecticut times three. So Connecticut can fit within our area 3 times. So to give you a sense of how large we are. But I'm home every night. So everything is driving range for me. My average drive is 45 minutes one way, on average a day. Sometimes an hour and a half, but that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. So for me, that was that transition for me is come off the road, be home every night with my wife. I think at the end of the day, that all becomes our ultimate goal of some point in our life is how do we come off the road? Some point there's got to be that transition. I was
Well, and
just blessed enough to be able to do that at some point. So,
I think that that's another reason why we are not in theater anymore.
yeah, exactly.
Because
Exactly. And on the road.
It's not only that you're on the road all the time, but it's also the worst time of day. It's just,
Yes.
Thursday, Friday,
Yep.
Saturday, 7 p.m. until X or something. It's just
load
it's
in, load
brutal.
out,
Right.
terrible
week.
hours.
Yeah, tech week, and it's just it gets monstrous.
Yes.
And so I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, you're smart, you got a day job, you've got benefits.
Yeah, 9 to 5 is not too bad. Well, for us, it's more like 7 to 4 because we try to
Yep.
work with the contractors, but and there's schools for us. We're lucky enough that our main line is the number one line spec'd in Houston, so we have most of the schools. So we're
Right.
approaching our busy time, and
so I mean,
yeah.
and that's another interesting thing, because the busy time for theater is very different. Being that summer stock usually is like the break period for most, and then so it's like everybody takes a breath. Whereas with schools, it's like, okay, everybody's out of the building between these months and these months. We got to keep going.
Go as fast as you can. Go. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, unfortunately, with COVID, I'm sure you guys saw it, is we were moving along fine, and then the shipping delays, and we're still fighting with some of that. And everyone got on back order, and when we were expecting to get busy, we didn't, and we still didn't. And then everything shipped all at once, and everybody wanted us all at once. and so we're going into winter working nights and working days. And so this past year was just probably a rough time for the industry, just trying to play catch up. And I know industry as a whole, we're still just fighting back orders and supply chain issues. I know a lot of our big manufacturers are just struggling, and unfortunately the customers we're all just kind of taking a pounding from it. But the big guys, they're smart, they're finding their ways around it, and they're working through it, and we're all just finding the new normal.
And I'm just curious, if you don't mind letting us peel the curtain back just a tiny bit. But, as a sales rep, what does it look like on your side when there's a supply chain shortage? Like, because I know a lot of people are screaming at you from the designer side saying, hey, I need my stuff done. But what does the other side look like?
Yeah, so for us, thankfully, because I always get to pull the line you guys do. Oh, I'm just a technician, so that's above me, but I always get to be a part of those conversations and peek back, peel back the curtain, as you say, is we start trying to source out other things.
Mhm.
Example, unfortunately, when he was having an issue getting out, none of our other lines had a touchscreen. And unfortunately, was just not price conducive to what we were really wanting to do
Right.
and what we needed to do. And so we were looking at other avenues, and you just
Just to
try to
quickly
find
explain
things.
those. Yeah, just to quickly explain those. I mean, we're basically talking about an all-in-one touchscreen with
Yes.
simplistic controls setup versus
Yep.
a robust building-wide system with
Yes.
remote touchscreens. And so, yeah, those small projects that need that all-in-one kind of Swiss Army knife option, you didn't have an option available to you.
So one of the things we were doing is we were putting on it, and
Which is another
while
kind of standalone
another kind
all-in-one
of
touchscreen.
standalone, unfortunately doesn't give us the ability to record scenes and presets like we can with it. And
Right.
so everything is fully programmed by the programmer. And if we don't have the input from the customer, then you kind of get what we give you, or you
Right.
cut another PO and we come out and give you what you want finally. So
Purchase order.
yeah, we love those. And so
So
unfortunately, it
purchase
wasn't the
orders just,
best option.
yeah, I'm just gonna try to clear jargon up so that people
Yeah,
listening
yeah,
who
yeah.
don't know these
Of
terms
course.
understand. But so a PO or a purchase order is essentially a commitment by whoever's buying it to the manufacturer saying, yes, we guarantee this is going to happen. This purchase is going to happen at the price you quoted us. And that way, no money has to immediately exchange hands, but the deal is done essentially.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of been one of those things. That's just a prime example of where we were just in one of those particular
Mm-hmm.
situations. Some of our other lines have handled things well as far as sourcing. I think had the tougher bite of that, but they've bounced back very well. They came
Mm-hmm.
through for us on a very large project, and they knocked it out of the ballpark for
Nice.
a very large project for us, and completely changed the bill of material to make something work,
Wow,
and we had a great opening night. So customer was
that's awesome.
pleased, and I think we ended up with better equipment in the end than what was originally on the bill of materials. So kudos to you for that one for sure. They always
Yeah.
come through
So I
for
mean,
us.
which again, once you have a purchase order, you're kind of on the hook to provide the system,
Yeah,
and so you can either make the argument that, well, we don't have the product, so we're gonna credit you back some money because we're giving you less expensive equipment, or you can just upgrade the equipment to what you have available and take the bite, which is what it sounds like happened here with you
And
guys.
that was a tough conversation to have with a lot of customers, right? I mean, I was in that same
yeah,
position you were in, Nathan, many times where touchscreen A wasn't available, but touchscreen B was, and there was a big price disparity, except the customer had already bought A. So now I have
yeah,
to try and find an alternate, which was proving extremely difficult, or go
yeah,
back to them and propose and all, the more expensive option.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as things go, I think that's not unique to his experience, though. I mean, there were purchase orders,
yeah,
and we're still seeing that, like for instance with Universal Douglas, where there were purchase orders that were
Yes.
mm,
signed, and it's like, okay, the company fell through. Like, what happens now?
Yep.
So that's something that a sales rep has to deal with, and I would say that's kind of a newish circumstance due to the pandemic. It happened in the past, but it was very infrequent. Nowadays, it seems to be more and more frequent because of the supply chain issues.
yeah. And I mean, not only are we controls, I mean, I want to say we're 180 lines, somewhere between 175, 185 lines, and most of those are
Right.
fixtures. So our fixture guys have they hear more and more about it than, of course, the control side do.
Right.
I mean, we're Signify, so when Signify took the hit, Signify is the largest fixture manufacturer in the world. So when they
Yeah.
took hits, we took some pretty big hits, and they bounced through those like a champ.
Nice.
But yeah,
But still, it's got
but
to
still,
burn to, yeah.
yeah.
And it's easy. I would say it's easier to sub fixtures at times because, unlike a control solution, it's not like you could just swap out power packs and be good. Whereas with fixtures, it's like, well, we could swap out drivers, or we could swap out, components, or just whole fixture entirely, and it's not going to drastically impact other than the performance of the fixture itself.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
There are certain things to consider. Warranties can be a big stickler with specifications. And
Yep.
while manufacturer B may have an equivalent fixture to manufacturer A as far as you're concerned, the warranty on the paper may not be the same. And that can bite you if you're not careful. So it's
Nope.
not always apples to apples,
Fair point,
unfortunately.
Ron. I retract the statement partially.
Yeah, that warranty. People like those warranties.
Mm-hmm. They sure do.
Yep. But yeah, so there's also something that's been kind of drifting around, and people have talked about this on a regular basis nowadays, which is service agreements and how they're becoming more and more commonplace, and even contractors are starting to offer service agreements. And so I was curious if that's starting to hit your territory as well.
Yeah, we've being a part of the rep, I don't know how a lot of reps handle things. For the most part, reps like working through supply houses because supply houses are good at paying. And it's just easier because you're already set up as a vendor. I mean, not really a vendor, but the account is there. That's where
Mhm.
a rep firm is basically a paper pusher between the supply house and the manufacturer. So all that information is already set there. So for the most part, when a customer needs to purchase something, they're going through the supply house to the rep firm. So it's not that often that we're doing a lot of work directly with the customer. We are moving more towards, for our market, to where we are doing a little bit more with larger customers, to where there's more of that backing. We do a lot more with them. It's more reliable, and we are starting to do service contracts directly with them. Some of our manufacturers that do offer, and it's documented very well that they do service contracts, we will sell their service contract, and then they will contract the work back to us. So we work it that way, where they pay us that rate, and it just kind of cycles back through to us. So that's one way that it's handled. But we are seeing more requests, especially through school districts. School districts are definitely wanting to see more of those service contracts now.
And why do you think there's such a push nowadays for that?
Probably because it's a little bit harder to get grants, I think. Just going through that process. So they're trying to maintain what they have, and then just in the light of getting new equipment. So trying to make what they have last longer is probably a bigger priority now than necessarily getting new. And
Sure.
they're seeing, and they're seeing now more with lighting controls. If you think about HVAC, a lot of HVAC BAS kind of systems are very high end level programming. Lighting controls has moved that way. Acuity, Wattstopper,
Right.
Dynalight, those are all very high level programming. It's not like you just slap this in the wall all the time and it just works.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, and a lot of it isn't. With BAS, you replace a component. Sometimes you need those guys to come out and calibrate it, and then the end user gets to adjust set points and their fine tuning, time delays, sensitivities of sensors. But it's getting to that point and they don't want to have to deal with those kinds of things. So that's where those
Right.
service contracts also come in as,
Mhm.
hey, we replaced this part. Can you program this new part so we don't have to pay additionally for this? We
Right.
get this discounted rate to have you come out. We have you come out once a year, twice a year, or have emergency visits rolled in at these rates. So I think that's a lot of what's driving it is we're getting more
Yeah.
complex. You're dealing with, just a more complex system now than a bunch of wire
Right.
nuts that you
Yeah.
twist together.
The thing that I like to say is that lighting control systems are becoming more of a living, breathing entity than they are just this
Yes.
static entity that they used to be. It used to be that you'd just have a switch on the wall, or you'd have a mechanical time clock that would actually tick, and you'd have relays that would slap on and off all the, and that was it. And nowadays it's much more dynamic and there's more to it than that. And so you can't just install a lighting control solution, walk away, and come back in 25 years and expect it to continue operating the way you set it up.
Right? No, I mean, so it's funny. We keep talking about this, and then little things happen in your life that make you go, "Yep, this is why I have a job." Just me
Yes.
personally at home in my own lighting system here at the house. My voice command speaker that used to speak to this other cloud service, that connection was broken due to an API integration and then an added fee that now needed to. So I lost some communication from my speaker to my cloud to back to my lighting fixtures until I reinitiated that integration and paid an additional service fee, which was a little annoying because I didn't know it was happening until I got the email that said, this integration's been disconnected. And I went, well, that's not okay. Like, I got no warning that this was happening. But luckily, we don't cloud base everything for all of our clients, right? But that's the kind of thing that happens every single day. One little thing breaks and it throws everything for a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think that's the other sticking point with service agreements that really helps bolster the argument to get them is integration. As opposed to buying a system and then connecting it and then walking away. The service agreement is basically saying we will make sure that this integration happens so that it's not just on you to figure out, or on you to pay somebody to figure it out later.
Yeah.
You're basically saying I'm paying you to make sure that this happens the way that I want it to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it takes off a lot of stress for the end user, and they can call us up. If we put a cellular modem on your site, we can dial in and, hey, you replaced a part. Awesome. Let me open up my software. What room did you replace the part in? Oh, okay. Well, da 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 da. A couple of keystrokes. Okay, you're back up and running. Thanks for your
Mm-hmm.
time. Thanks for your business. Call us if you have any other problems.
Right.
It saves me from hopping in my truck and sitting in traffic for an hour to go do something that's going to take 5 minutes as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
beneficial for us, as the service technician, to be able to do something remotely as well. So that's
I'm
that's a nice
curious.
little benefit.
So we do a lot of the same things, right? So I'm curious if the Houston market is different than our market. So I'm as a dealer, we offer the same services. We try to push service agreements when we can, right? But we offer a lot of those same services. But it sounds like as a rep, you're offering a lot of the same services we do. So I'm curious, in the Houston market, is that relationship with your dealers and your providers and different than it, because it sounds like you're providing a lot of startup, a lot of that support service that would
Mhm.
normally go to a dealer or the supply house.
Yeah, I think CW, we're very unique. Wattstopper is our biggest line as far as commercial. ETC is our theatrical line. Um, Wattstopper has moved to a very strong rep-based support. So at CW, we have 3 technicians. My project manager, he functions as a technician as well. He came from Texas Scenic. He worked there for years, ETC for years. So he is very sharp. He can go into the field and he can do things that any of us can do. So we really kind of have 4 technicians. And so we're very well equipped to fill the gaps um, where Wattstopper may not have local support for us. We have one third-party technician support from Wattstopper here, and then as far as ETC goes, we have a couple of dealers locally, but obviously we're going to take on any jobs that are sold by the distributor. ETC is going to reach out to us because we have 3 certified technicians. We're about to do a check ride certification on our 3rd technician here. And so we'll take all of those that are not dealer sold, just because, we have the experience. I've been ETC for 16 years. So I've done some large projects. I've done the small projects. So we're capable of handling those larger projects. I would say we're not a typical rep firm. We are very controls oriented. Our controls department, we used to be Edwin Jones Company. So anyone that has been in the industry long enough that is familiar with the Edwin Jones Company was around for years. Ed Jones, great man, since retired. He had a massive rep market. I think at one point he had like all of Mexico, all of Texas, over to like New Mexico and up into Oklahoma. I mean, he was the ETC rep, and he started out as a technician, and so he was a controls boutique. That's what he did. He didn't do fixtures; it was controls. So the EJC Edwin Jones Company office in Houston, we were just controls, and we merged back in 2019 with CW Lighting to give them a more rounded controls section. So everyone that came over, we all come from a theater background. We all have that controls background. So I think we're very unique than probably a lot of other rep firms. So that's why we tackle things, I think, the way we do. I think we're just a very unique market that way. I know the guys out in California, they tackle a lot of their projects as well. One in particular, they go after their projects hard there in California just because there's so much commercial work in California. I mean, Title 24, runs the state. So there's a lot of work. But we tackle things very much like a dealer would. We get in there with the customer, we own the project, we stay with the project, and we try to offer service agreements and hold on to that customer long term.
Well, and I think, that really highlights something that Ron and I talk about from just integration. And I think the term dealer integrator are almost synonymous in this case, what we're talking about here. But, while we were at Light Fair, one of the things I had fun with was asking people if they defined dealer and distributor differently. And, most of the people were like, no, what are you talking about? They're the same thing. And so, I think that's, again, another rollover from the theatrical world, that we make the assumption the word is ubiquitous, but I would say it's not ubiquitous. Yeah. And so, you're really providing an integration service in terms of what architectural would identify it as. And that is, you're a local integrator as well as a local rep. And so you do startup, programming, integration, service, and any Passover stuff like training or documentation for the project, which feeds into your bottom line, because ultimately you're going to want to charge for that for those services, whereas other reps may roll it into the cost of the project as its initial purchase, and just say, okay, the cost of getting this whole lighting control system is is getting our commission as well rolled into there, whereas you're taking a more active approach.
Yeah, I mean, we sell it as a full project, and then we take on services. Hey, my system's not working. Will you come take a look at it?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Whereas
and then that
other
obviously
sales
becomes
reps,
its own thing. Yeah.
right? Other sales reps might say, "Well, you need to get a technician to do that,"
Yeah.
Right.
and so they'll either fly out a technician from wherever the factory has their technicians,
Yeah.
or maybe they have local technicians that they can tap. But you're basically that local technician as well, so you don't have to say, oh, it's going to cost $3,000 a day to have a technician, because you have to fly them out, you have to keep them at a hotel, so you keep the costs down as well in that vein.
Yes.
Which is,
sure.
yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a more holistic approach to lighting control sales, and something that, it is uncommon nowadays to see kind of a sales rep take that perspective. You do see integrators like Ron do that, and they kind of carry both sales and both sides of sales, essentially, the repping and the actual direct sale approach. But as far as things go, it's not that they get commission and the service labor.
I think it's what sets CW Lighting very much so apart from others, is just that all-in-one kind of mentality, that we truly have a controls spec team, and then the controls service and field service department with our own dispatcher and project management for controls. I think that really sets us apart, the way of how we approach the customers, and we're very customer centric that way. Once we get a customer, we're going to treat them like a customer for life, and we're going to hold on to them that way. So I think if more reps approached it that way, of going after some of those good technicians, bringing those technicians off the road, letting them be home every night, I think there would be a big change in the market, and reps would find more revenue for themselves. I think a lot of rep firms are missing a nice revenue source for themselves.
Oh, shh. Nobody heard that. There's not a single rep listening that just heard that. Nobody heard that.
I mean, I think,
come on.
I think the thing is, though, when it comes to being a rep, there are so many different avenues that you can take, that it's not like there's one silver bullet that's going to make you billions of dollars. You really have to scope out your territory and be familiar with who's there, create those relationships one way or the other. And so what you're saying is that you're creating relationships with the end user as much as you are with the specifiers. And
Correct.
So that is still a lot of work. It's not like you just get to sit back and do nothing after that. You need to maintain those relationships, as well as you still need to go out and hunt down those relationships. If you're not spec'd on a project, well, okay, you might still be able to get onto the project if you're working with the owner and it's a private project. If it's a public project, you could do an equal substitution, but that oftentimes is not going to be accepted. So really, they're two completely different relationships, and you don't get to leverage each other.
I'm going to make some assumptions that you have a really good relationship with your dealers. And I will say, it must be very helpful for both of you, for you and your dealers, to have so many technicians, right? You saying you have 3 to 4 technicians on staff. Yeah. If your dealers get into a bind and they need somebody, right, they're not having to call the factory necessarily. They can call you, and odds are you could probably free up a guy to help them out. A lot of other reps maybe have one controls guy, at least locally for us anyway, right? They maybe have one guy if you're lucky. And,
I don't know if that's true.
Okay, I'm just okay, some generalizations here, but I don't know too many that have 3 or 4 locally in our area. So I'm just saying, I'm just saying that's assuming you've got a good relationship with your dealers, it must be very helpful for both of you, right? That must be a good back and forth.
At one point, I think when one of our dealers was shy on technicians, they had lost some technicians. Technicians moved on, bigger, better things, project management roles. We would fill in and help them out if they couldn't come in and from their primary local territory and come in and do the job. We would fill in and do the startup for them. Absolutely, we will help out our dealers in those situations. Um, if we're taking it, we've never really needed the dealer help at that point, but I'm sure if it came down to it, um, our dealers would come to help us, and our dealers would have our back. But yeah, 100%, yeah, we're there for our dealers when our dealers need us.
Yeah, and so I mean, in a lot of cases, the dealer rep relationship is very similar to the distributor rep relationship in that vein, because it's, okay, fine, you are the people actually purchasing this. We're not actually between the exchange, but we're there to help you should something go awry or you need more information.
Yeah, I know my project manager a lot of times if we're doing the commercial side of a project and one of our dealers has the theatrical side at a school or something, and we're on site doing the commercial walkthrough on the control
Mhm.
side, if the contractor has questions about the theatrical and it's etc, then we're going to pause and we're going to answer the questions. We'll let the dealer know that we answered those questions,
Mhm.
and go on about our day, because last thing we want is anyone upset with manufacturer's equipment because wrong answers were given. We're
Right.
all in it together, because at the end of the day, it's about making a dollar, but you don't make money in the long run if you're not helping your customer. So
Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. And I think, that makes your firm very admirable in its approach to dealing with customers and ownership of projects, because of the fact that you're not thinking short-term sales, you're thinking
yeah,
long-term relationships and sales. It's kind of, it makes me think of like the older format of how car sales used to be, where you would have a salesperson you would go to and just say, okay, I want the next best car, and they'd give you, a recommendation and all of that. Nowadays, car sales is kind of all over the place, but it's more of that. People go to you because you are a source of valuable information and help.
yeah,
And yeah, okay, you make profit off of the choices they make if you make the recommendation, but at the same time, there's a reason you're getting paid for that. It's not free, but at least to the person who's experiencing it, it's not a pain point.
yeah. We truly believe we're giving them the best equipment for what they're going after. We truly believe we rep the best lines in the industry, and we believe that we're going to give them the best service of anyone else in town. So I like to
Have you
think that
ever
every rep firm believes that, and every rep firm approaches things that way. But by
have you ever
golly,
had a project where you had to walk away and you were like, this is not a good fit?
uh, not to my knowledge. Any job that I go on, I've show must go on, so I'm going to find a way to make it work. Whether it's supposed to work that way or not, I will make it work that way. If it means I got to break out the duct tape, then you know it's going to
Hopefully
work.
that's just
MacGyver it a little
metaphorical.
bit, yeah. Just a metaphor.
Yeah. Anyways, we're almost out of time here. Really awesome conversation, kind of going all over the place, but ultimately steering us in the direction of, kind of the answering the question of what is a dealer. And so, going back to, when Ron and I were going at Light Fair and saying, hey, what's the difference between a dealer and a distributor? And people would kind of go, I don't know what the question is. Um, Essentially, a dealer is an integrator. It's what Ron is. He actually does the sale of the equipment to the project, but he's kind of a step, he or she is a step above the typical distributor. because there's a little bit more ownership of the project. And so kind of looking at your company's model, it's not just a sales rep, which is somebody who kind of gets the word out there to people and gets people to consider their product. It's also that you're a dealer or an integrator in architectural terms. And so you're kind of trying to take the whole aspect of lighting controls from the sale on and making sure that it's going to be an effective project with that control system, so that there's no, point where you dust your hands of the project and say, okay, it's your problem now. You really want that long-standing relationship to be there, so that if something goes awry, they'll call you. But then maybe later on down the road, when they want to do more work expanding or upgrading their systems, they'll give you a call again and say, hey, we're ready for round two. As opposed to, somebody who might make the sale, walk away, never think about the project again, and leave people with a real sour taste in their mouth because things went wrong and nobody was there to help them out.
Correct. That's the ultimate goal for us.
Well, and again, I think that's really admirable of you guys to try and approach that. And it's interesting hearing the history about how that kind of transpired, being that you had two completely unrelated rep agencies that merged together to create this more dynamic solution in a sales rep, because of the fact that you had a sales rep, which is really unique in this world, that's solely focused on controls.
Mm-hmm.
There's no lighting in the line card, which is really fascinating to think about.
We were about 12 lines. That was it.
Right. And how long had that, how long had he been running that business?
I'm going to guess 40 plus years.
So, I mean, he's been through the peaks and valleys of the industry when it comes to control solutions, where there's like, suddenly everybody's really focused on controls, and then there's a huge drought, and then suddenly everybody's focused on it again. And because I've heard so many people say, controls had never been complex, never needed somebody hovering over it. And it sounds like, no, they have. And so much so that there was enough business to support this model.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the model merged with a lighting rep, it was just a perfect synergy. At least nowadays, it was a perfect synergy. I don't know what it would have looked like in the past, but I think a lot of rep firms are starting to adopt a model, like to Ron's point. There might be a controls guy or a couple of controls people in the firm that are doing controls and hovering over the controls aspect, but there's still lighting people as well. They still need to support the whole lighting line card.
Yeah. And I know within our controls team, I mean, those guys, they have adopted and taken on the joy of learning the lighting line card as well. So our team is very well rounded. I'm very proud to work with the group that I do. They're sharp. There's, if it comes to fixtures, I know who to go to. I am definitely not the fixture person. Keep me out of the fixture world. There's a reason why I'm CLCP. I am not a lighting.
You're not LC.
I am not LC.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was really interesting to hear, your take and your business model. I think it's really fascinating to see all of these different nuances that are going on, and hopefully we're going to see more of this in the future. But until then, you kind of have a great opportunity to take advantage of the lack of reps that do that. So I wish you all the luck. But again, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure being here.
Well, thanks, guys, for watching this week's episode or listening, depending on how you're getting your content from us. Really appreciate you either way. Had a fantastic conversation with Nathan talking about the rep agency and how their rep specifically works in the Houston market. Very different from how some of the reps here in the Northeast are. And I'm curious about some of the rest of the country, how that dynamic sort of works as well. So, love to hear from some other people about that as well. But just want to take a minute to thank Nathan again and remind everyone that this week's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. And if you just are finding this podcast for the first time, check out our website, Lighting Controls Podcast. We're also found on all the various multimedia outlets, Spotify, iTunes, Google. Just look us up. We're there, Lighting Controls Podcast. But also check out the website for news in the industry and some cool merch like the shirts that Ron and I are wearing, or this mug over here. We've got some great merch for you to check out if you want to support us. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Nathan.